was over, she got another look at the clock, and her partner came out of the bathroom going, "It's asleep." She'd been frozen on the toilet for 4 hours. You can imagine. And they had some friends sleeping on the couch in the living room, and the friends heard the scream, and one of them got up and was reaching to knock on the door to make sure they were okay. And the next thing she remembers was waking up on the couch in the morning. Okay, so Sierra called a friend of hers who, she was in the psychic community down there in Colorado Springs, and the friend came right over first thing in the morning and looked at her. She said it was more like looked through her, and I've had people look through me. I could see them. You could tell they were literally looking inside. And her friend says, "Sierra, you're pregnant." Sierra says, "Not likely." She was a lesbian. She hadn't been with a man in a long time. My friend says, "Nope, you're pregnant. You should check." And so she went to the store and got a home pregnancy test, and sure enough, it came up positive. So she went back and bought every other brand, and they all came up positive. Okay. So they're trying to figure out what to do. She decided she wanted to keep the kid. So they set up their psychic protection circle and all this stuff, and Sierra didn't want to go to a doctor because she was afraid they'd take the baby if they knew she was going to go to a doctor. So her friend said, "Sierra, she's 4 months pregnant, she's showing," and they said, "Sierra, you can't just have this baby without ever going to a doctor." So she says, "Okay, don't tell me when, you guys set it up, and then you just come and get me and take me when I don't even know what's going to happen." Okay. So the night before they were supposed to come, something happened. She woke up in the morning, she felt different, her stomach was flat. She was unpregnant before her friends got there to take her to the doctor. And so she's pretty sure she's got a kid out there in the universe somewhere, a hybrid. And more research she's done, she thinks her mother was probably half ET, and her father was a very mysterious man at the military base who had an affair with her mother, and then when her mother got pregnant, this guy just disappeared and nobody would tell her where the guy had gone. So she thinks her father may have been fully, she may be 3/4, and she's part, I think, Cherokee. But she's very psychic, very intuitive. And so anyway, this movie brought this all flooding back, and she had go to the radio program and look up the one on Mary, Mother of E.T. It was about probably May of last year, and she goes into the whole story. She started digging for answers and asking questions of military people and stuff, and got their attention. She came home one day, the black limo was waiting for her, the 2 men in black said, and she just walked right up to him and says, "It's about time, I want some answers," and hopped in the back seat. And then she started thinking, that may not have been a good idea. I might get disappeared here. They drove her up to the north entrance of Mount Cheyenne, not the main entrance that you see in the movies and stuff, but a different entrance into the back of the side of the mountain, and took her in. And she said her military training was coming back. She says, "I could take these guys out with a ballpoint pen or something." And when she'd start to think of something like that, the guy who wasn't driving would just kind of mentally calm her. And she said he was very, very gifted psychically, and she thinks he was probably a hybrid or extraterrestrial, and that he was helping keep her calm and under control, but in a loving way. She didn't think he was bad, just that he was helping keep her steady. And so anyway, all these memories came back, and I had done enough work with, I'd had enough high strangeness of my own, and I'd had friends who, in the workshops we did, where I knew to listen with an open mind and not ridicule and all that stuff. And so I considered the probability that her story was real. And her other friend, kind of brushed it off. But a day or two later, Sierra calls me up. I give her my card, and she says, "Don, we got to talk." Okay, so I drive down the hill, met her at a restaurant, and we talked. For the next several weeks, it's like, "Don, we got to talk." I said, "Well, how about dinner?" She said, "No, now." Okay, so I'd close out the chapter. I was working on writing the book. I'd close out the chapter, or close out the file, get in the car, drive down the hill, meet her, talk about whatever was going on. One time she says, I'm getting hyper-controlling about everything, and it's really bothering my partner. I'm just over-controlling. And I said, well, Sierra, have there been some things that happened in your life that you were not in control of? And she says, yeah. And I said, you suppose maybe you're overcompensating now? And she goes, duh. Okay, so she was, being paralyzed and not able to react when Gray was in the ring with her, really bothered her because she liked, she was a soldier. She liked to be in control and not helpless. And so we, with just a little reinforcement over the next few weeks, we kind of solved that problem pretty quickly. But can you imagine if she'd gone to a psychiatrist with this story? They'd probably have her strapped to the bed and injecting drugs into her. So it's lucky I got to her first, but she wanted to connect with her child. And one night I got the impression that there was somebody in the bedroom with me just as I'm falling asleep, but I couldn't quite make the connection. I mean, it was quite a bit out there. And the next morning as I'm waking up again, I got the impression it was her daughter. And so I called her up and I said, Sierra, I think your daughter was trying to connect with me last night. And she had a strong impression that it was a male. She was getting a male energy. And I said, I'm pretty sure it was a daughter, but we'll find out soon enough. And I managed to connect her with a friend of mine, who we'll get to in just a moment, who helped her with some of this too, and I gave her some hints. I said, for one, the initial relationship you had was not necessarily mutually consensual. And you may have agreed on a soul level to help with maybe the hybrid program to improve the genetics of this race that's deteriorating, can't procreate. But you can change that agreement at any time you want. You can say, I don't want to have anything to do with you again, or you can say, I'll work with you, but on my terms. You have to explain to me what you want to do, and I have to get my conscious permission for everything, or anything in between, or anything you want to, any way you want to set the contract. And so she decided to work with them, but under her own terms. They had to get permission, and the whole relationship changed dramatically. And finally, one night she was able to connect. It was like a guardian or a guide who was trying to get her ready on the other side, and she connected with him, and he finally said, are you ready? And she says, yes. And then she connected with her daughter. Her daughter actually came in, the consciousness, the soul came in. It was like a braided walk-in, like two souls within one body. And she said it was really weird. It was like two kids trying to drive a car, one's steering, one's running the gas, and it's herky-jerky. And, it's like, okay, who's driving this body? But she got some impressions. Sierra was kind of automatic writing. This is the page she was writing in her little notebook as this thing was going on. So she's just kind of writing as she's going, but it says, I have to let go so much. And then her daughter said, what is this? And Sierra said, fear. Fear of what? Of letting go and not being able to come back, going so far out that you can't get back. And finally she said she was just exhausted. So, but her daughter wanted to learn about our world through her eyes. So they watched a movie. Sierra likes to watch movies, and her daughter saw a lot of our world through Sierra's eyes. Sierra didn't see as much of her daughter's world the other way, but that'll come later, I guess. But finally it ended. Sierra said that she got the impression that in 18 years, or when her daughter became 18 in their time, that she'd be able to come back physically and visit in a physical form, which should be coming up relatively soon. Sierra also got very sick. She got pneumonia. She was so exhausted that she just, her immune system kind of was wiped out, and she got sick for a week or so, but she says it was so worth it to be able to spend the night with her daughter, consciously communicating. She'd do it again in a heartbeat. So Mark Kimball does these workshops for people who've had encounters like that. And you know, we get together on Friday night, we have dinner, and we set the ground, or we just get acquainted, basically, have dinner. And then Saturday we set the ground rules, basic confidentiality. You can't say Joe Blow said this unless you've got permission. You can talk in generalities but not specifics. Listen with an open mind, don't ridicule. And then we'll share some of our experiences to kind of break the ice. And a lot of people have had encounters, UFO or ET encounters, 20 or 30 years ago. But they're holding it inside because they're afraid everybody will think they're crazy. They don't realize that probably 30 or 40% of the population has had some kind of a sighting or encounter. But everybody thinks they're the only one, and that they'll be ridiculed. And the disinformation types, the PSYOPs guys, generate that ridicule thing from the movies and other ways, so that that's the automatic mode. When somebody says, I saw a UFO, the automatic instinctive response is to laugh at them. That's what they want. That's psychological disinformation. So we set a safe environment, we share some of our experiences, and then encourage them to share theirs. And it's like a ton of weight coming off their shoulders. They just ramp down. It's very healing to just be able to talk about it.
Do you think that more and more people are having contacts of different kinds?
Yep. And more and more people are starting to talk about it. It's I've been breaking the ice for 15 years or more, and making it safer for pilots and other people to talk about it. And once you break the ice, it's amazing how much people open up. You gotta ask some careful questions to kind of get an idea of their level of interest. And you know, if they come at you with the fundamentalist Bible stuff right away, then you just don't go there with them. But if people indicate an interest, you know, hey, what'd you think of that new sci-fi series, or you know, this program or that program, Ancient Aliens or something, and they've got a lot of interest, then you can start to open up a little more, and you got to be a little bit vulnerable. You know, let them know that it's safe to talk. You know, share a little bit of your experience, and then, boy, the floodgates open. So.
Do you have any opinion, or I haven't been able to see it here because it's blocked here in Costa Rica, what I can see from the new X-Files.
I haven't seen it yet. I've heard good things about it. I've got to go see if I can find it on the internet or something. But anyway, we were doing one of these workshops, and I'd met a gal at a spiritual retreat, a Rosicrucian mystical weekend, and she happened to be staying at the same house I was, so I was giving her a ride back and forth, and talking about some of my UFO experiences, and she was kind of surprised somebody would speak so openly about it. And she hinted that she'd had an encounter back in her youth, and her stepdad was in the Air Force, and she talked about this experience on the base radio station, and when she came out of the radio station, there was a Project Blue Book officer waiting to talk to her. And she thought, oh, he's just a nice guy, wants to know what happened, and she said it went downhill from there. It got really bad, and she actually had to hide out for several years. She lived inside Mount Shasta for several years, and then she went up to Oregon in the Cascade Mountains. There's a bunch of tunnels and caves that the Native Americans have as part of their system up there, and she lived inside the mountains and then worked with some of the Native American tribes up there, working primarily with the medicine men and the chiefs. And she told them, you know, I'm a star person, I'm here to help you. And they're very open to that. They have interaction all the time. But anyway, I told her that Mark Kimball was putting this workshop on in a month or two, and that we still had an opening. She kind of hemmed and hawed and reluctantly agreed to come, and then she almost chickened out, but she did come. And Friday night we're having dinner. She's just kind of playing with her food and not eating much. And Heidi, Mark's wife, said, you know, I had to show her how to use the ATM, and I'm going, whoa, that is fresh off the wrist. So Saturday we start the thing, and she was kind of vague and evasive about her story, but we had a misfit in the group. He was kind of adversarial with everybody and a little harsh, and he just didn't come back on Sunday. And we had a couple other people had other commitments, so we had a little smaller, much more cohesive group on Sunday. So as we're kind of wrapping up, I said to Tasha, I know there's a whole lot more to your story than what you've shared so far. Now that you know the group a little better, you care to share a little more? She took a really deep breath and she says, Earth is a very difficult assignment. Wait a minute. Maybe I've got this backwards. Let's start over. That's how she broke the ice. She was not born here. She was dropped off as a very young kid on the steps of a monastery, raised by the nuns initially and then foster parents. And you know, that gave her cover for not having a birth certificate or anything. But the higher dimensional, she's fifth dimensional, Arcturian, and they don't lose that direct connection where we, when we get about 2 or 3 years old, we kind of lose that direct connection with Source. She doesn't. She remembers full consciousness, who she is, why she's here, the whole bit. And yeah, it was, the oh my gods were coming about every 2 to 3 seconds for a day or two. But you've read Mark Kimmel's book, Trillion?
Yes.
Well, this is like Sarah and Trillion. So I had been talking, you know, doing these sea-steady outings. Well, when I read Mark's book, I said, you know, Mark, that's my life the last 5 years, except for running around the country with a live physical ET in tow and dodging the INS. Well, after I met Natasha, I couldn't say the same thing about running around the country with a live physical ET in tow. As far as I know, the INS wasn't after us, but yeah, I've had her in my car. She stayed at our house one night. Yeah. So that was an unexpected surprise. They use portal technology as well as ships. She said if you're high enough vibration, if you're resonating unconditional love, which she can see the auras, and actually she sees us more as an energy aura than as a physical person. From her perspective, we're like a beautiful pink light or a beautiful golden light or you know, whatever. And the pink, she says, she had me do an aura photo. I'd done one earlier, which was mostly blue and green and purple. But she says, do another one. I said, well, I had one. She says, it changes. Okay, so she was working in a metaphysical bookstore one day a week at that time. So I trotted in the back. I got an aura photo. It came up all pink and gold. And I said, pink? She says, yeah, that's unconditional love. She says, I like this one much better. Okay. So she says, if you're resonating at that high a level, that you can travel through the portals. If you're not at that high level, they can take you on the ships. It takes a little longer, but it's still much faster than the speed of light. So, considerations when talking with our galactic cousins, you've got to be pure intent and totally honest. It became apparent very rapidly. As a matter of fact, shortly after that weekend, we were setting up Skype so we could communicate a little more securely, and this was before the NSA got the keys. Now they can read everything on Skype even though it's encrypted, but back then they supposedly couldn't. But she's not much of a techno geek. She says back home they don't use computers. It's all a knowing and a telepathic communication, so computers just kind of slow things down. But she said we had the Skype connection set up. I could see and hear her, but she could see me, but she couldn't hear me. And I did a quick loop back test with my microphone, and yep, I'm working. You know, I hear myself. And so then I said, oh, I can type. So I jumped over into the text window and I'm typing furiously. She's asking questions. I'm typing. And she starts laughing hysterically. I said, what? What's so funny? She says, your telepathy's working a lot better when you're typing. She's in Arizona, I'm in Colorado. I'm going, okay, total honesty, that's the only way this is going to work because she can read my thoughts.
Yes.
And you know, at first she'd wait for me to ask a question before she'd answer, so she didn't weird me out. But nowadays, I just start to think something before I even get it formed into words in my head, let alone out of my mouth. She answers like I've already asked the question. Now, I'm working on it. She says I'm a very good telepathic sender. I'm working on trusting the reception more. I get impressions and intuitions And maybe I'm expecting too precise like a worded message or something, and maybe that's not the way it's supposed to work. So I'm working on becoming a better receiver, but yeah, she and Sierra and several other people I know can totally read your thoughts. So start becoming disciplined in your thinking, because as we move into the higher dimensions, it's going to be totally transparent. And if you're saying one thing and thinking something else, everybody's going to know. So you might as well start practicing now. You've got to be careful not only what you say, but what you think. She says we are being evaluated. They're watching. They're just like you with the pendulum. They're watching the general level of consciousness rise, and they're watching the people who are higher consciousness and knowing who they can work with. As a matter of fact, she told me later that she had to move off the reservation down into the city in Phoenix to get her master's in education, because part of her mission is to set up schools and develop curriculum for the new generation of kids that are coming in, the ones they call the indigo and crystal kids, the psychic warriors and the spiritual ones that are going to lift our consciousness. And they're our future, but the schools don't know how to handle them. They don't learn the same way we did. So they're bored stiff, they're totally connected, and they got all the information in this classroom, read a chapter, regurgitate, write a paragraph about a type of thing or whatever, just doesn't work for them. So they get bored, they fidget, they daydream. I did that when I was a kid. Fortunately, they hadn't invented Ritalin at that time, because I was bored and daydreaming a lot. But they label these kids as ADD, ADHD, and they drug them into normalcy with Ritalin and stuff. And it just destroys their potential. So part of her mission is to develop curriculum to teach these kids the way they learn, so they can develop their full potential. And so she had to go into the big city to get her master's in education, so she'd have the qualifications. And she was totally overwhelmed by what we would call mainstream society. So she was sent to Colorado. She didn't say exactly who, but she says she only takes orders from the angels and Source, which is what she calls God's Source. And she was sent to Colorado to find someone who could help her. And she found me, which totally blew me away, because I thought they were omniscient, omnipresent. I thought they wouldn't need any help from us, but she was just totally overwhelmed by trying to function within mainstream society. And she had a couple of issues that she needed some help with. One, she'd set off the magnetometer at the airport wearing no metal at all. Her body energy is so different. And I've got several friends who are energy healers that work on her. One can see the fields, one can feel them. And they both say that she is so different from anyone they've seen. They're absolutely convinced she is what she says she is. But she'd set off the magnetometer just walking through it wearing no metal at all. And of course they're wanting her and they're patting her down, and they can't figure out why she's setting it off, and it's causing all kinds of hassles. And so I said, well, you know how you can kind of psychically create a bubble around yourself, a shield? If somebody's beaming anything negative at you, you can mentally create a shield and reflect it back. And I like to put like millions of tiny little corner reflectors on it. I see it kind of like that iridescent titanium jewelry, to where whatever they're beaming at you goes exactly back to where it came from, creates a feedback loop and fries their equipment. I like to do that. But anyway, I said, why don't we do that in reverse? Just build a bubble around yourself, a nice skinny bubble, and reflect your own energy back in so it's not hitting the magnetometer. And then you have to take off your shoes generally, so bleed off the excess energy through your feet as you're walking through. There's no sensors in the floor. And then when you get far enough out the other side, you can open up again. So she tried it. Matter of fact, after the weekend, I took her to the airport, and I was going out at the same time she was, so we went through the security together. And she walked through, got out the other side, goes, check. It worked. She had a deathly fear of dogs. Our little Italian greyhound just terrified her, so we took him to the kennel for the weekend she was there. And we talked about this fear of dogs and how the dogs will feed off your fear. They sense that. but also her energy is so different from most people's that they also pick up on that. She'd set off dog alarms half a block down the street ahead of us. I mean, half a block ahead, they'd start barking at her. And so we talked about all of that, and I said, well, we were gonna take you for a hike around Evergreen Lake, but a lot of people walk their dogs, so I mean, we should go somewhere else. She said, nope, I wanna try it. You sure? Yep. Okay, so we went down and walked around the lake, and I think she was just telepathically keying off the way we interact with the dog, how you kind of mentally say, nice dog, pretty girl, whatever. And just kind of mentally talk to the dog as you walk by. About 2/3 of the way around the lake, I said, Natasha, you realize you haven't set off a single dog alarm yet? She goes, check. The light levels back home were much lower. Just see in the picture here in a moment. The ever-present sunglasses for her, and they were getting attention for wearing the sunglasses indoors. And so I did a little research. I found these sports contact lenses. Tennis players will wear them so they don't have glasses bouncing around on their face when they're playing tennis. It's just Nike makes some. They're just a dark tinted contact lens, no correction. Just like a sunglass, but it's a contact. So she got fitted with that. Light levels are comfortable, don't attract attention. Check. Solve that problem. So they were able to come up with some creative adaptions for her, and helped her. She got her master's in education. She did a year as a vice principal in the Phoenix area school district, and she was very upset with the level of corruption in the school administration. Now she's back out on the reservation running her own school and developing curriculum, which she's hoping to share other schools will pick up. So anyway, we're getting close to critical mass, and they know who's ready. And if you are ready and you want contact and you put that intention out, it's likely to happen. Another thing to remember is as you're shining your light, your spiritual light, there's no such thing as a dark switch. If I've got a light in this room, you can't flip a switch and turn that light out. My light illuminates the room. So the more you share your light, the more you illuminate the world. The people around you see the way that you live. They see your positive energy. They start to change. You affect them, they affect their friends, etc. This circle spreads, and your circle of influence becomes huge. So, shine your light. Focus on what you want. Remember that we are becoming, as we move into the higher dimension, we're becoming more and more thought responsive. So, I'll actually go back and think, is there anything you ever achieved or acquired in your life that you didn't visualize first? Can you think of anything? Probably not. You just, the time frame between when you visualize you want that new car and the time you actually acquire it is long enough that you forget about the desire. But as we move up in frequency, those thoughts start to manifest more and more quickly. So be disciplined in your thinking. Don't create any problems by thinking about the things you fear, but focus on the world you want to create. Extraterrestrial, Natasha doesn't like that term. She's lived here most of her life. It's like if you've got friends who come from Africa or Asia or some other continent, and they've lived in your country for a long time, they consider themselves Americans or Costa Ricans or whatever, even though they were born in a different part of the world. She was born on a different planet, but she's lived here most of her life. She considers herself a resident of here. So she didn't like the term extraterrestrial. Alien in their vernacular means the degree of separation from God or source, as she calls it. We're the ones where the veil comes down, we forget that direct connection. So we're the aliens in this relationship. She's got full consciousness, full connection. Whenever she needs to download something for a particular project or subject she's working on, she just downloads it from the Akashic Records or whatever from source, uses it, and then you don't even really need to store it because you can always access it again. It's kind of like the internet. And that's the way it's supposed to be, actually. People think of the brain as the whole thing. Everything happens in here. It's chemical reactions and storage and neurons and stuff. Actually, your brain is a transceiver to source, to the Akashic records, to all that is. And you can access it. The brain memory is more like a emergency backup hard drive. But we've been kind of conditioned down to where we think that's where everything's got to be. Start working on the connection. She prefers star cousin, star brother, star sister. She says we are biologically related. We're descendants of colonists from a number of worlds. So we're much more like them. As a matter of fact, the scientists in the covert projects wondered why so many of the extraterrestrials they were studying looked so much like us. They're asking the wrong question. Why do we look so much like them? Changes your perspective just a little bit. So which of these people was not born on this planet? Can you tell?
The second one.
Yeah. Sunglasses are a clue. She's always got those sunglasses. And that's Heidi, that's Mark Kimmel's wife.
Yeah.
And that's my wife and me and another friend, Ron. And we were hiking around about 6 months after she first dropped the little bombshell about Earth being a very difficult assignment. She came back out for a reunion with the core group there, and we met up at Mark Kimmel's place, and we went up to Estes Park and hiked around. And saw this rock, and it looked like a real nice place to get a photo. So I said, hop up there, I'll get your picture. And then some FFA kids, Future Farmers of America, you know, the kids with the blue corduroy jackets and the golden embroidery thing, they came by and said, oh, hop up there, you can be in the picture, we'll take it for you. Okay, so I hop up there, they take the picture, they have the camera back. They had no idea what they were taking a picture of. But anyway, I'd also told her, as we were making arrangements for her to come out, it was a week or two before she came out, I told her that the vet had found some marble-sized tumors in her cat's mammary glands. She just had these big tumors. She used to sit on top of the old CRT type computer monitor because it was warm, but also it was close to us. You know, when I'd be working, she'd be there close to me. But I'm sure it was breast cancer. So she had all these tumors. So I said, we're dropping the cat off at the vet Friday night when we head out of town to meet up, and she's having surgery Saturday morning. And I thought, oh, poor kitty. Well, we drop the cat off, we go up, we hike around the lake, and I called back to the vet to see how the surgery had gone, and the vet was totally perplexed. She says, I showed you the tumors, right? I said, yeah, they were like big as marbles. She says, well, I don't understand it. I couldn't find anything, so I didn't operate. Tasha, did you do something for our kitty? And she goes, uh-huh. I said, well, thank you. It's okay. We'll pick the cat up on Monday. If you listen to the interview with her back in April, and look for this picture, is probably the easiest way to find it, her in the red sweatshirt with the cat in her lap. She tells all about that incident, but she said she wasn't able to tell me earlier, but they have a rule. They can give us a gift, but they can't tell us they did it. There's nothing in their rule book that says what to do if we guess, and I guessed. And that put her on the spot. That's why she goes, uh-huh. So that's, it's nice to have friends like that. Okay, so we all chose to be on this planet at this time in our between life soul agreement thing. Actually, many applied around the galaxy, around the universe. This is a very important time in Earth's development. We're reaching that level where we're making the leap to the next level. And she says it's actually very unique that it hasn't been done before to move into the fifth dimension while retaining the physical body. That in every other case, in order to move into the fifth dimension, they have left the physical body, gone to an energetic form, energetic body. This is a grand experiment. We've already succeeded in the higher dimensions. It's just a matter of cleaning up the loose ends and manifesting it in the physical. But we all chose to be here. Matter of fact, we competed to be here. Many applied, only a few were chosen. So you are among the best of the best in the galaxy. it's just time to remember what your mission is and get on with it, because it's time. Here's a photo, and you notice the difference in age. She can kind of shapeshift. She, the first time she said she was starting to look too much like her teenage daughter and people were asking questions, so she aged herself in a big jump. She says it takes a lot of effort. And then between this one and a couple of years later, this one, she'd also kind of aged herself, put on weight and various things because she wasn't looking age appropriate, I guess. But what else do you see in this picture? And you may not be able to see it from over here quite as well. You see anything interesting in there? She needed a photo for a photo ID for work, and she handed her cell phone camera to her daughter and said, just take a picture. And she was a little bit bummed because she'd just come back from her home world and back into this crazy dimension, and she kind of wanted to be with her family back on the home world.
Right side.
So she's a little bit, but over here, her daughter took the picture, went and put it on the computer and says, Mom, come here, you better look at this. And she recognized it immediately. That's her husband from back home and her daughter. They're peering through the dimensional portal, saying goodbye. And she asked them, why did they allow themselves to be photographed? And they said it's because the people need to know, they need the evidence, they need to start to understand. So they deliberately allowed themselves to be photographed. This has been studied by a number of scientists, physicists, photo analysts, etc. They wanted to make sure it wasn't Photoshop. She said, what's Photoshop? She didn't even know what Photoshop was. They took the camera, they took the raw photo, they looked at the metadata, they've proven that it was not doctored. On the original, this is a little more purplish, which she says is gamma radiation, which is part of their portal technology. So they're studying that, and they've confirmed that that is gamma radiation on the picture. But it was interesting because when she was down at Pagosa Springs in 12-12-12,
Yeah.
or the 12-12 conference, I guess it was a little earlier in the month, but she was wearing a sling. And I said, Tasha, what happened? You know, she'd broken her elbow. She said, bad landing. I said, what? Apparently it's very much like Stargate. You dive through the portal, you jump through. And she said she crashed and burned on landing and cracked her elbow. Well, by the end of the weekend, she'd taken the sling off and thrown it away because she'd healed herself by then. Okay. She also, interestingly, during one of the breaks, she referred to herself as human. I said, but Natasha, I thought you weren't born on this planet. And she says, I wasn't, but I'm humanoid, all right, 2 arms, 2 legs, head on top, 2 eyes, all that stuff. I said, okay, well then how do you refer to us? She said, Terrans, residents of Terra, which is one of the names for our planet. I said, okay, so that was a big paradigm shift for me, and in a way, it just collapsed that wall of separation. They are not different from us. They're not separate from us. They are human just like us. They just happen to come from a different planet. So, let's see. I think I covered all of that. It's always a paradigm shift when I get in one of these philosophical discussions with her. Okay, well, we've got a relatively small room, but we've got a little bit of cultural or ethnic diversity here. So we've got humans of Syrian, Andromedan. I've been told I'm very Pleiadian, but then Sierra tells me that there's actually 7 civilizations in the Pleiades, the 7 sisters, and that I originally was Lyran from the Andromeda galaxy, and the Lyrans were one of the civilizations that moved into the Andromeda galaxy. Sierra tells me that I was, that we used to work together eons ago, and that I was one of the scientists who brought in all the different cat species on this planet. The Lyrans are the cat people. They have cat-like heads. Some are four-legged, but some are upright, but very cat-like. And she said that one of my pet projects was bringing all the different cat species to this planet. Okay. I don't have a conscious memory of that, but she tapped into that. So, where do you come from? You got the physical genetic heritage, you've got your soul lineage. Where did your soul come from? How many of you feel like this isn't home, that you yearn for somewhere else out there? Got a particular star system or constellation that
Well,
draws you?
I've heard Alpha Centauri.
Okay.
Orion, Orion.
Orion? For me, the Pleiades just pulls me. And then Sierra and Natasha and others have confirmed that that's where I came from most recently.
I got a star seed, came in 20 years ago. You're a star seed out of the blue. What can you tell me about that?
Well, starseeds are probably people like us that came in from other worlds to be born here, most
Yeah.
cases born here,
Yeah.
and to help lift this planet up, to lift consciousness up. So
Yeah.
they're here from the higher dimensional worlds to bring that about.
Just a funny experience I had, my wife channels,
Mm-hmm.
and she started channeling in her sleep every once in a while. A couple months ago, and we're both dead asleep, right? She starts saying, I didn't hear the first word, and she says, you are from, or son, which could be you or they, son de grupo izquierdo de Andromeda, they're from the left group of Andromeda. And I said, and I woke up and I asked her who, and it says, she said the volunteers. Now she stayed asleep, she never woke up. She said the volunteers, and I said, am I one of them? And she said, yes. And I said, how many are there? And she said, a few hundred thousands.
Mm-hmm.
But in the morning, I asked her about it. She remembered. She didn't wake up. But she said, when she said from the left side, she was seeing the constellation. So she needs to look it up on a map and see it. And she could probably pinpoint where it's saying that we're from. And she said, when I asked the number, she said she didn't see the number 600.
Huh.
So like 600,000 of us from Andromeda. Okay. And of course, I know people from all these other places, Pleiadians, Arcturians, Syrians.
The Pleiadians probably have the biggest presence on the planet. Natasha said that the Arcturians are one of the oldest, most advanced civilizations. The Pleiadians are very spiritual. The Andromedan, or the Arcturians, a little more scientific. They're very spiritual, but more scientific. And she says in some cases they're kind of like the Marine Corps of the galaxy. They go in and clean up problems. And they're watching the situation on Earth with the cabal, trying to drag us down and manufacturing wars and all kinds of stuff. And they're going, can we go in? Can we go in? Can we go in? And well, it's primarily the Pleiadians on that planet. We're trying to let them resolve it. And finally got to the point where the Pleiadians couldn't overcome the problems with the Greys and the reptilians and stuff. And so
I've heard that same story.
they said, okay, you can go. So a small group of Arcturians came in to clean house and level the playing field for us. But back in 2012, when this was really going on big time, she said there were 1 million off-planet peoples living among us, ones that were not born here, working on the planet. And in 2013, when it was really heated up, there were 2 million. She says now it's probably under 100,000.
Where is she from?
She's Arcturian. Not the star we call Arcturus, but from that civilization. She says it's out beyond about 103 light years from here. Out beyond Arcturus. You know how to find Arcturus? It's probably a little harder to see from this far south, but the Big Dipper, okay, if you follow the ladle up, you hit the North Star, but if you follow the handle of the Big Dipper, you arc to Arcturus. It's one of the brightest stars in the sky, one of the closest.
It's reddish too.
A little bit reddish, yeah. And I found out something interesting. The Polynesian navigators that would, cross the ocean in their ocean-going catamarans, they used Arcturus as the guide star to find the Hawaiian Islands because it goes exactly on that latitude. It goes right over the top. So they would come from Polynesia, out across the ocean, and they'd angled enough that they were sure they'd gone to the east of Hawaii, till they got to the point where that Arcturus went directly overhead at night, and then they turned and go due west, following that line until they ran into the island. Pretty smart people. So, anyway,
The extraterrestrials that are here, can they be operating within the government behind the scene? And we talk about the existing financial structure and governmental structure going down, and there are people behind them that are step in, the good guys, basically.
yep,